so we're clear.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So just so we're clear, we're expecting lots of questions. So we've set up our presentation expecting questions. So my name is Chrystal. I'm the executive director of our Livable Solutions. We're a new organization in Kingston, or newish. We started last October, but actually I've been operating for the last 2 years looking for solutions to find ways to help people find paths out of homelessness. And so my journey started at the Bell Park encampment and then in kind of around the end of March 2020, when the pandemic kind of went, full tilt and everything was closed, and we ended up at the tent encampment at Bell Park on Montreal Street. So my journey started there, but actually as well, my child experienced homelessness and struggled with her mental health and ended up on the streets for 3 years. So I'm also a mom of somebody who's struggled with homelessness, but fortunately they're stable now and living with me, which is awesome. So our Livable Solutions aims to include and be as inclusive as possible with people with lived experience and guide our decision making from people with lived experience. So everything we do comes from ideas of people who are experiencing homelessness. It comes from discussions with people experiencing homelessness, and as much as possible we try to walk alongside of them, supporting and being in service to them, as opposed to telling them what they need. We try to hear from them what they tell us they need, and then respond accordingly. So along the journey that we've had, we had a conversation at Bell Park, and a lot of conversations at Bell Park about what would be an ideal solution for transitioning from homelessness and finding ways to be more stable. Because of course, nobody wanted to live in a parking lot. Nobody wants to live in the streets, and nobody wants to live in the woods. And if anybody tells you otherwise, I can give them a lecture for you. So at Bell Park, they conceived the idea of a tiny home village, and then our Better Tent City in Kitchener opened up around the same time. So I went to visit it and brought back pictures and video and kind of the concept, and got an agreement that that's similar to what they were looking for. So for the last 2 years, we've been petitioning decision makers and council to help us build a tiny home village of some kind in Kingston to help people without homes. And then eventually in mid-November of 2021, council approved funding to start a pilot project for 10 sleeping cabins to just test the concept and see if it really is a concept that would help people without homes. So we've been open, we managed to move really quickly. So the funding was approved mid-November, and by mid-January, we had 10 people living in the cabins. So we're located at Portsmouth Olympic Harbour. We took over a space that was formerly a bar as our common space, and then we have 10 cabins outside with 10 people, and then inside the common space we have bathrooms, showers, a kitchen, laundry facilities, and we're sitting in the living room right now, or the kind of the common great room. And so what I wanted to do today was mostly have Cory share his story about how he ended up with us, but I wanted to tell you first how I found him, because it's for the work that I do, it was an interesting journey for me. So Praise, if you don't mind, if I could have screen sharing ability. Hi, Rhonda.
I believe that you should be able to share.
Okay. So part of the work that I do, which is actually a bit of frustration for me right now, because of the sleeping cabins, I haven't been able to be out on the trails as much. But part of what I had been doing was going out into kind of remote areas of Kingston looking for encampments and, bringing supplies and just checking in on people who are living kind of away from town or in the woods. And as I was doing this in the West End, I kept finding structures that we're like, maybe they were kids' sports, but I don't think so. But every time I found them, they were already abandoned and there was nobody there. But throughout the West End, I kept finding these structures. Here's another one, and another one. And I found them all really interesting. I had no idea that they might be related at the time when I was finding these structures, but it certainly piqued my curiosity. And then one day I found this sign, and it was at a camp that had been abandoned already. So can you see that well, or do you need me to read it? I think it's um, when I found the sign, I made it a mission, just a personal mission to find the person who wrote this sign. And it just spoke to me that somebody who is struggling would still think of others and be mindful that others would need support as well, even though they were struggling. And so that I found this sign in spring of 2021. And just kind of kept my eyes open and my ears open and asked around a bit and kind of listened. It was from this camp, the sign was at this camp. And there's some interesting artwork as well. There's, I kept finding other structures. And then, this is Cory, just before Christmas, I found a camp in the West End that clearly had somebody still staying in it. It had a fire, kind of a fire pit that had smoke coming from it. And when we arrived, I was there with somebody else. There was no person in sight or no obvious owner in sight. And sometimes people hide because they don't know me and I show up in a big pickup truck and a dog and maybe a couple of people with me sometimes. And it can be intimidating, I think. And so we kind of wondered if the person just disappeared on us. So I left, and then New Year's Eve, I went back, and out came Cory. This is later, but out came Cory with a big smile on his face, and we engaged in conversation. And it turned out that after we had spoken for a little while, we discovered that I know his brother, I've met his dad, and all of these camps were all his. And he was the one that wrote the sign. So it was a nice way for me in a personal mission to end 2021, having met Cory. So we invited him. It was just as we were bringing people into the sleeping cabins. So we invited Cory to join us in the sleeping cabins. That's inside the structure. So the structure was more robust, but I didn't get pictures when I should have. So he's already started pulling down the camp when we took these pictures. But so I'm going to say, I'll just put you back on his smiling face. So Cory and I have gone out to his camps a few times to kind of wander and talk about his journey and talk about how he ended up building each of the camps. And this is actually, we climbed a tree because he had a platform up in a tree. So when we were climbing the tree, I snapped this on him. So I want to hand it off to the conversation off to Cory and have him and we need to be respectful and mindful that people have struggled, but he's going to share a bit of his journey and how he ended up living in these structures and building these structures. And also, I just want to remind you that Cory's story is just the most evidence that homelessness could happen to anybody. It's not something that people choose, and you can come from anywhere to end up struggling without a home. But if you, I'm going to take it off screen share so you can see Cory better. But if you have questions, please feel free, use the raise hand or jump up and down or whatever, and we'll be happy to answer questions along the way.
Hello. So the beginning, I guess. Yeah, it can happen to anybody. For sure. I came from a family with good parents. They both worked hard. And I did too. My whole life, I've been a truck driver and I've raised 5 daughters. And my oldest is a nurse, and then the next one's a paramedic, and it goes on and on. So 4 years ago, my wife decided that she didn't really want to be in the marriage anymore and wanted to go out and start having fun and all this stuff. So we separated, and in that couple months that it took to get everything sold, I went from owning a house on the lake with a ski boat and 4-wheelers, skidoos. I had my own tractor trailer, brand new pickup truck. I had everything I ever wanted in life. And 2 months went by, and I walked away from that house after cleaning it all out and selling it with a bag of clothes on my back, literally. So from there, I went into the woods, depressed, I guess you could call it. I'd never had any mental illnesses before, so that's as close as I could say to what it was. Pretty down. And just had to learn how to survive. I didn't want to talk to too many people. I had a lot of people turn their back on me, and things got a little rough with trying to survive out there. So when you don't have a cell phone and you don't have a vehicle, you don't have any money, it is impossible to get a job. And I learned that because, like I said, I drove truck for, at that time, it was about 26, 27 years. Every place that I called for a job, as soon as I told them my experience, they hired me on the spot. First place I call. But then they would ask me if I had a phone. No. Do you have a vehicle? No. How do I get back and forth to work? How do I, you can't work without this stuff. And that is literally what was stopping me from getting back on my feet. So the longer I stayed out there trying to come up with food, I went down to Martha's Table. And it is a good program they have, but when you come from a working class family that never struggled, it takes a lot of pride to walk into a place like that and sit down and eat a meal. People you don't know, people from the streets. I never experienced the shelter, the hub, and these other shelters they have around because I was too full of pride. I didn't want to embarrass my children. And so I just stayed in the woods. And the longer I was there, the worse it got. So long story short, I did what I had to do to survive. I never stole anything in my life, and I had to steal. I never did drugs. I smoked pot here and there. Who doesn't? But hard drugs, never did that. And when you wake up and you hurt so bad you cry, and you cry all day and all night, and you find something that'll make you stop crying and stop hurting the way you're hurting, you're going to do it. So when I was introduced to certain drugs, there's one that took all that away. There was no more pain, no more crying. Stayed busy, stayed awake, and just did my own thing out in the woods. And I tried to get back on my feet 4 or 5 times. I get some money somewhere, unemployment, or I even had to get a couple of welfare checks, which again, the pride really took a kicking to. When you're out there like that, your ex doesn't want you to see your kids or anything, because where are you going to take them? What are you going to feed them? So that's understandable. So then you lose your kids, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. There's no way back when you're by yourself. There's no way to get back to reality. I was out there for 3 years when Chrystal found me, and I was on drugs because that's the only thing that took my pain away, literally. Because if I wasn't using drugs, I would just cry all day long. And your mental state of mind starts to deteriorate. Start talking to yourself. And I didn't have a volleyball named Wilson like Tom Hanks. So, it's not a good thing, and it can happen to anybody. And I'm glad that she pulled up that day and introduced herself, because this place here, it's a warm, safe place to stay. You got access to phones, food, everything is free. There's no rules. They don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. There's no catch, which was one of the first things I asked her. She said, I have a warm, safe cabin, a warm, safe place for you to stay with all free food, access to phones. You can get a job, do your resume up, yada, yada, yada. And I said, what's the catch? Is it, do you want me to quit doing drugs? You want me to do this and programs and all this other stuff? She said, no, you don't have to do anything. I'm inviting you to come and, giving you the opportunity to get back on your feet, because everything is there that you would need to do that. You don't have to do anything, she said. So I came here and I looked at this place, and then I took off because, I wasn't used to being around people. And then she came back a week later and talked to me again, and I decided to come down here. I've been here for 2 months. I'm not using drugs anymore. I had a job, but my license was suspended for unpaid fines. So I'm getting that straightened out right now. Unemployment's coming in. I'm waiting for that so I can pay the fine. And, my mind is clear. I'm getting back on my feet. And if I would have went down to the hub, the shelters, I think I would have went the other way. I would have got into even harder drugs. I would have been around rougher crowd, been fighting, getting beat up, whatever, some bad stuff happens on the streets. And I didn't want to experience all that stuff because of my age, and I've seen it. I never lived it, but I just didn't want no part of that. People stealing my stuff and arguing and the drama. So that's why I went into the woods. But a lot of people, 90%, I would say, of people, they can't make it in the woods. So they have no choice but to go to a shelter. And if the shelter is not going to provide what this place does, I mean, what's the point of going somewhere where you're just going to deteriorate even more? So this place for me has been a heaven sent, and I'm thinking within the next month, I should be back on my feet. I'm getting housed. They're going to help me with my rent. And there's not enough I can say about this place other than it's working for sure, not just for me, but for most of the people here. And they were on the streets and they had it rougher than I did. So I'm not really, I'm not an interview type of guy. I'm a truck driver, but I mean, I thank you, God, for this place is all I got, really. And yeah, that's about it. Stay in school and get an education. And that way, if you ever come into something like I did, at least, you'll be able to go and work somewhere. You won't have to struggle and look for work and go through what I went through, because it wasn't fun. But hopefully everything's going to be good now. I think so. That's it. That's all.
Does anybody have any questions?
I got one.
Mhm.
First of all, thank you for sharing. That was a really powerful story. I was just wondering at what point you decided to put yourself before your pride.
When I was so hungry and I was 28 below zero and I had nowhere to go. My hands were blue, my feet were blue, and I called my ex-wife and asked her if I could come to her house for an hour and get warm. And she said, "You're not my problem anymore," and hung up the phone. And that changed me forever. So I went down to Martha's table that day. I didn't even have $1. You're supposed to have $1 to give them for a meal. They let me eat, they let me get warm. And that was the first kick at my pride. But when you're in that kind of shape, bud, you don't have a choice. It's that or die. And I actually think I might have died that night. I don't know for sure, but I fell asleep. I fell asleep outside screaming for my mom to help me. And she's been passed away for 6 years. And I slept. I passed out from pain because, believe it or not, it is excruciating. Like, the pain from freezing is worse than burning alive, literally. You ask people, would you rather burn alive or freeze to death? Most people say freeze to death. Trust me, you do not want to freeze to death. It is excruciating pain for hours on end until you pass away. I passed out, I think, from the pain, screaming for my mom to help me. And I woke up 12 hours later at 28 below zero outside. I woke up. That's not possible. Most people would say that's not possible. And I don't believe it is either. And I woke up somehow. I couldn't move. I was frozen solid, but I managed to get up. It took me an hour to start to move my arms and stuff. And I almost lost my toes. And that was when I said, enough with the pride. I need to eat. I need to get warm. I need to figure out what I'm going to do here, or I'm going to die. And I still, to this day, don't know how I didn't die that night. Maybe I did. Maybe I've been given another chance. I don't know. But that's when I decided that, you know, I don't care what people think anymore. I need to eat. So that was it. That's when I started to realize where I was in life and what I had to do to survive. Swallow your pride is an understatement.
Yeah, for sure.
I was a popular guy, lots of friends, good family, blah, blah, blah. And just boom, just like that. It was all over. And I can't blame anybody but myself. I mean, my marriage, it fell apart. It is what it is, right? It happens to anybody. So
Did you try reaching out to like friends and they all just turned their back on you?
yeah, well, see, when my ex decided that she was gonna leave after 18 years, yeah, I was a little bitter for a little bit. So we had our differences and she decided to turn all our friends, take our friends on her side. I didn't. My mom was gone, my dad, I don't have contact with, he's out west, and no siblings and that. My brother, I mean, he's in worse shape than I am. So I had nobody to call except for a couple of friends. And you know, at my age they have their life, and again, pride got in the way of that. So I could have I have a good friend of mine there, and I could have went and stayed with him and his wife, but they have 3 kids, and I didn't want to do that to them. I didn't want to, you know, be a burden on anybody. So I did end up staying with them on and off a little bit, couple days here, a couple days there, but it was more or less just a couple days because I didn't want to do that to people. So,
Yeah.
but I had nobody really to call. I mean, I still don't. So my daughters live way up north, the older ones. And I just didn't have anybody to call after my wife got through with all our friends. They were pretty much on her side, if you want to call it that. And I went to some people, you know, could you lend me $5? Could you lend me $10 to get something to eat? She's telling them all that I'm a drug addict and yada, da, da, da. So they didn't want to help me out. And yeah, it was pretty rough, man. I didn't have anybody to go to. And that makes you even more depressed. So then you really don't want to come out into the public at all. It's funny, you know, when I had the world, I had respect too. People would shake my hand, look me in the eye. Normal to most people, right? When I was homeless and didn't have clean clothes or anything, people would walk by and not even look at you. There's a lot of people out there that will help homeless people and kind of get it and want to help, but there's a lot of people that won't even look at you, man. You know, I used to be that guy. You walk by and, you know, get a job, you know. Not anymore. I've given my last $5. There was a girl in the lobby at the BMO. She had a blanket on. She was about 17 years old. And like I said, I had $5. So I seen this girl and I went in and I gave her my last $5 so she could get something to eat and a coffee. And when I came out, a friend of mine was crying and couldn't believe that I would give my last $5 to her when I was in the same boat. But having 5 daughters, I had to do it. You know, it was the right thing to do. She was hungry. She was cold. I was with my friend in a car, warm. So it's funny how the experience of homelessness can change your whole outlook on all of it. It's crazy.
For sure.
Yeah.
And in the 2 months that you've been where you are now, have you managed to make some friends?
Oh yeah, there's 9 other people here, and I'm pretty much friends with everybody here because we're all in the same boat, different stories, you know, but everybody has kids. I think most of the people here have kids. So that's one thing in common. And we're all a little bit older. There's not a lot of you know, 20-year-olds here. It's mostly 30 and up. So yeah, everybody here I consider a friend now for sure. And we all do help each other, you know. One day if I need a smoke or whatever and I don't have money or smoke, so I can get a couple off of that guy. Next day he'll get a couple off this guy. We all help each other out here. So it's good like that for sure. But yeah, I'm friends with everybody here. I think everybody is friends here. You just learn, it's like Big Brother, you know, you go into that house, you all fight and don't like each other at the beginning. And by the end of the show, they're all best friends. It's the exact same thing. I actually have an idea for that. But anyways, but yeah, we're all friends here. And I didn't know anybody here before I came here. Like some of these guys knew each other from other places in town. I was in the woods by myself. I didn't want to be around people until I went through. I knew I had some issues to deal with, especially, getting into the drugs and everything like that. So, but I've worked through all that. I mean, I'm not hurting anymore. So that was the main reason why I did that, was so I didn't feel that kind of pain in here. I don't have to use anymore because I don't feel that now. I'm good to go. I'm almost back on track. Thank God. But yeah, it's I wouldn't want to see anybody go. My worst enemy, I wouldn't want to put through what I went through, man. It was hell. It sucked. But all these guys have been through it too. My brother lost pieces of his finger, froze to death, ambulance picked him up. He was laying in a puddle that was frozen. His hand was like frozen in a puddle. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And it's nice to see that there are people out there that like to help, because there's a lot of people that need help for sure, especially since the pandemic, and just the world's gone crazy right now. So it's nice to see when donations come in and people are helping. It makes me feel good that there's still good people out there, because I didn't think there was a lot anymore. I thought everybody just cared about their own little family and that was it. Screw everybody else. But it's really opened my eyes that there's a lot of people out there that do care about homeless people. And I'm one of them now. That's all I want to do other than work. I want to donate my time to help people that need help, because everybody's got a story and it's crazy. Some of these people, they've had businesses, and it's amazing what life can throw at you. So get ready, guys. It's pretty wild. But hopefully from this, you'll know what to do.
Other questions?
Any other questions?
Pretty quiet.
I actually have a small question. I wanted to know how living in a community now, like having that kind of community centered environment, how that has impacted you going forward in terms of your mental stability, your physical health, and just how it's kind of affected you actually having like a community to live with now.
At the beginning, it was a little bit overwhelming because, like I said, I was by myself in the woods and I was quite content. A couple times I wasn't sure if I was going to stay, just because, did you take this? Did you take that? There's no milk? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to live with anybody, really. You picture yourself living with a roommate and you're like, oh my God, I got to put up with this person. Try putting up with 9 other people or having them put up with me. So, but we all have individual cabins, like there's one person to a cabin. So you do have your privacy to go and take your time. So that's a real big bonus. And like I said, I've never stayed at a shelter. So I don't know what it would be like. I can't imagine staying at a shelter that they have beds all lined up beside each other. I don't think I could do that. But being here, it's socialized me again to be around people in a slow way. There's not a great big group of people. There's just enough to get re-socialized with society, and it's been good for me. Like I said, when you're by yourself for that long, you don't have a volleyball to talk to. It's nice to get around people again, because before all this happened, I was a social butterfly. Like I would talk to anybody. I was the life of the party. Life was great, had lots of friends and everything. But to come into a group of this size was probably perfect for me. Not too many people, more than 1 or 2. It was good. I think it was perfect, actually. Once we all got to know each other, you learn to trust people again, and which is a big thing when life screws you like it did. But it's been good. It's been real good here for me.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions from anybody else?
I'll ask. What did that process look like for you to regain your trust, not only in the people around you, but if you believe in it, in God, or I guess what kind of put you in the position that you were in? How did that happen? And was that easy? I can't imagine it was, but
No, it wasn't easy at all because I trusted everybody before, and a lot of things happened. I buried one of my daughters. She had congenital heart defect and passed away. So that I had some issues with the big guy, I didn't understand how you could do that to somebody. So, and then this happened like, a couple years later. So I had my own demons to deal with, if you could say. And I didn't understand a lot of what was happening in my life because I've never been a bad person. I've never been, I've never done anything evil to anybody. Everyone cheats, everyone lies, everyone steals something, but I wasn't even that person. And for this to happen to me, I questioned God and the devil and all that good stuff. The night that I froze to death, I had a few dreams after that night that really opened my eyes, to God and hell and everything like that. And then I don't know, it just, when I came here, it was like, I wouldn't say my prayers were answered, but I was at the end of my rope, man. Like I didn't know what to do anymore.
restored a little bit of faith.
Sorry?
It restored a little bit of faith, kind of.
Yeah, it did, because when you're in that state and you're asking yourself, is this what the rest of my life is going to be like? Is this what you have planned for me? Because if it is, I don't want it.
Yeah.
So do I check out or do I stay in hell? Like it was hell. And I was not thinking about committing suicide, but I was wondering, do I want to spend the rest of my life like this? And I knew I didn't. So what do? I was questioning what to do because I didn't want to be where I was. And then Chrystal showed up. So it's kind of like, I don't believe that God talks to people like, hey, go get a job, but I do believe that there is a higher power for sure, because I did pray to get me out of here, help me. And I'm being helped. I got help without asking, like literally without asking people for help. Help came to me, and that's pretty rare, that's who else, how am I here right now? Somebody's helping me along. Could be my mother, could be God, I don't know. But yeah, it definitely restored my belief in a higher power, God, for sure. Yeah. I mean, how else do you explain somebody showing up and saying, I got a free place to live, warm, safe, free food. You don't have to do nothing. Just come live there. That doesn't happen every day. I've never heard of that before without a catch, but
Yeah.
there's no catch. It's just come here, get warm, get a meal, stay as long as you want and get back on your feet. We'll help you. So it's been awesome, man. And yeah, it definitely restored my, my outlook on all that. Because after going through hell, you kind of wonder what am I doing here? Is this the purpose of my life? Because no. So yeah, it did for sure help me restore a lot of things, answered a lot of questions. That's for sure, bud.
So looking into the future, are you hoping to are you seeking employment again? Like, would a truck driver, is that something you'd want to go back to?
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going to do. And once I felt better about myself and, healthy again and kicked out of some bad habits that I was doing, once my mind was clear, I was telling Chrystal that, I could have a job anytime I want, really. I just need a way to get back and forth to work, depending on where it is. And I would need a cell phone for sure, because you can't go on the road without a cell phone. It's unheard of. And she offered to help me with that. And I said, okay, well, I'll prove it. And the first company I called hired me. That afternoon, I got a letter in the mail saying your license was suspended for an unpaid fine. So I'm waiting for unemployment right now. They're supposed to be paying me money they owe me, which has been a while now, but you know how that goes. So as soon as I get that, pay the fine, I have the job waiting for me. So I'm going back on the road, yeah. And unemployment, if they come through, which I hope they do, they're going to be giving me some back pay that I am entitled to. And that'll be enough to get a car, a cheap one. And
Yep.
and keep going. Housing's looking for a place for me right now, 1 bedroom, and they're gonna help me with the rent. So hopefully everything works out the way it's supposed to, and I'll be back on my feet and everything should be good. I don't ever want to be back there again, so I'm gonna try a little harder, not to ever be there again now that I got a little taste of it. You don't want to be there. It's not a good spot. But yeah, I'm gonna go back driving truck, and on my spare time, I'm gonna probably volunteer down here
That's awesome.
and help Chrystal out.
A number of our a number of our residents have signed up to take the same courses that our staff take in terms of training. So by the end of our pilot project, which is supposed to end April 30th, we'll have a number of people trained up to be either support in the next, if we end up with a permanent location, which we hope to, or to be out on the streets with me doing street outreach.
I did do the Red Cross course already too, because when I was younger, I wanted to be a paramedic for the Coast Guard, search and rescue, but I ended up being a truck driver because I was too cool, so, but I did do the Red Cross course, and that was good. So I'm certified with that now.
And not only just this, he opted to do the harder basic life-saving course, which a number of our residents have chosen to do as well. Because it has enhanced, for us, it has enhanced CPR, which when you're dealing with opiate overdoses, it's important for people to have the best tools in their pocket that they can have.
Where do you usually drive trucks?
I've done everything, but I did long haul out west for years, and I had my own log truck for 5 years. And then I bought a Peterbilt, a 379, and I hauled reefer vans, hauling meat. And I've done construction. I've done every kind of trucking there is. I hauled liquid asphalt, 400 degrees hot. It's I've done it all. I used to go down south quite a bit too, but I don't travel down through the states anymore. Just too much hassle at the border and everything else. So, but I'm looking for a job where I could get home, every night would be nice, but that's unheard of really, unless you're doing construction. But I would like to get something local, a 12-hour run every day and Monday to Friday. That's what I'm looking for. But if I got to go on the road, so be it. Got to do what you got to do. I don't really care, but I would rather try and find something local so I could, go home every night. I've done my fair share of long hauling. That's for the birds.
I'm running out of questions here.
Sorry.
That's totally okay. Does anybody else have any questions for either Cory or Chrystal before we move on?
Oh, and the last hut that I built was the most sufficient out of all of them. The other, like, I had no idea how to build a shelter when it all started. So, but the last one that I built, it had no breezes, like there was no wind getting in anywhere. What you seen there was me tearing it down. It had a back wall on it. I had a little wood stove out of a ice fishing hut. So it was mint. Like once I got that thing fired up and got coals in it, I had a camper door that I had found, an aluminum one off of a small camper. And I had that on the one end so I could open the door and go in. And it was like a A-frame, it had plywood in the tarp like you seen there. But 20 below zero, I wasn't cold. I had to open the door and let the heat out. And I'm probably the only one in Kingston that had a shelter like that. Literally, Chrystal said that was the best shelter she'd ever seen anybody have. I had a wood stove in there, pipe going through the roof. It was awesome. Wasn't awesome, but I mean, compared to where I was for the couple years before that, it was pretty good shelter.
Given the situation, yeah.
Yeah, I had 6 skids, pallets, and I put them on the ground side by side, 3 and 3, and then I stood 3 on their sides beside them. And then I just put a pole at each end and one across the top. And then I just put plywood straight down to the ground and then the tarp. And I closed both ends in, put the door on the one side. And I'll tell you, man, I had to open the door and let the heat out when it was 20 below zero. That's how sufficiently warm that thing was. It was pretty cozy, but still not a good place to be living. Not cool, but it was warm. But I mean, you imagine laying there at night, you know, yeah, you're warm, but you're listening to the coyotes outside snickering around and deer crashes through the woods. You think of freaking bears coming at you or something. Then you got to worry about people, you know, other homeless people looking for something to eat or something to take and pawn and get money. And it's hell, man. I didn't sleep at night. I'd be up all night because I just couldn't sleep at night. I was worried about, you know, who's going to get me or what's going to get me. So I would crash in the daytime for a few hours. You don't get a lot of sleep when you're homeless. You might get 2 to 3 hours a day if you're lucky. And that's in the daytime somewhere. You know, you go downtown and you see people sleeping on a bench. They don't want to be there. You know, they've got people they know walking by saying, oh my God, there's what's his name. It's embarrassing, belittling to yourself. But where else are you going to sleep? That's safe. You know, in the middle of the day in the summertime in August, you imagine sleeping on a steel bench downtown. You know, it's not good, man. But you have to. Your body can only stay awake for so long, right? So, yeah, I really don't know what to say about homelessness other than it compares to hell in my mind. You're in hell, is what it is, and that's not a good place to be. I don't ever want to go back, that's for sure. So thanks to this place, I don't have to, hopefully. Next time I'm in that predicament, I'm going to come here and not go to the woods. But hopefully I don't have to now that I'm back on my feet, pretty much.
For sure. Thank you so much. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to our next and final speaker. So we have Rhonda Candy here with us, and she is the Executive Director for Martha's Table. So I will let Rhonda take it away.
Okay. Well, first I'd like to apologize for being late. I live well north of the city, so you know, I was just getting ready to sign in, and I thought, you know, I mentioned in advance that sometimes my laptop is a little fussy. So I was fiddling with that. Regardless, we'll cut to the short version. Here I am, but my apologies for being late. And I would actually add to that thinking I probably, there's nothing much I can add to what's already been stated and so powerfully stated. You know, the experiences that Cory has lived, that's all there is to say. And you know, I have statistics and things that I'll share with you, but you know, how do you survive something like that is the impact, and you know, how you get there and how do you avoid getting there. That's it's all been said. So I'll go through my presentation, but you know, I think you know, hearing from someone lived experiences is so important. And something that he said struck me personally. He said, you know, stay in school and study and try to avoid finding yourself in a situation, because you know, we at Martha's, we've made an exercise of not judging people, how they get here, why they're here. At our door, it doesn't matter. We've just welcomed everyone equally. So, but people do have stories, and people do have reasons, and you know, it could be any one of us, anyone sitting here today. We could find ourselves in that situation. Most people are what we say is one paycheck away from finding themselves homeless, and maybe it's not even a paycheck, maybe it's a circumstance, one incident, one injury, right? So I think, again, I wish I had been on time and not having to follow this presentation. So but pay heed to the comments made. I think they're really vital. So seriously though, thank you for inviting me. I think at Martha's, you may know that we focus on food. We serve a vulnerable population, and we have day shelter. So what I'm going to tell you today is really through observation and interaction. I've been with Martha's since 2008, and I've gotten to know so many people. It's really a personal place. Like, we're very front lines. So I know Bob and Tina and Tom, right? I know those people. And it's part of what we do. We say hello, we welcome people in. How are you doing? Can I get you coffee? Sometimes it's the person's first time in. we show them what to do and where to go, help themselves to coffee, whatever it might be. So, I mean, I've witnessed people that are living unhoused or cycling through periods of homelessness. And some are precariously housed. So, you know, there's a lot of different reasons, and the circumstances always vary. You know, there's a lot of reasons, as you know, it's been so well stated: alcohol, drug, mental health. Are most people are struggling with some level of that, and I think in our society that we see here at Martha's. I'll start by sharing, you know, some of the current official statistics with you, and what our city is doing about homelessness and what they're not doing. And I'll share details of a few people that I've gotten to know, just basic details. So this information is taken from the most recent United Waypoint time count, and that was done in 2021. So since 2016, Kingston's experienced a steady increase in the number of youth living in transitional housing and shelters. Definition of transitional housing, it's intended to offer a supportive living environment for residents, offering them experience, tools, knowledge, and opportunities for social and skill development to become independent. It's an intermediate step. There's a slight decline in the number of people experiencing multiple episodes of homelessness. So that means their housing is more stable than during the last few years. I mean, slight decrease, that's about 9%. So I think that's probably Chrystal's interaction. We've seen a decrease. I think it's amazing what you've done. So there are more people experiencing absolute homelessness. In 2018, that count reflected about 81 people. And in 2021, there were unfortunately 134 people absolutely homeless. And the definition of that is the situation of an individual or family without stable, permanent, appropriate housing or immediate prospect or means of ability of acquiring it. So homelessness describes a range of housing and shelter circumstances. So people at one end without shelter and at the other permanently housed. A count, I think, really wouldn't be complete without acknowledging that there are people that are considered homeless. They're hidden, sorry. They're homeless, but we're not aware of them. So they may be staying at motels, which is not affordable or comfortable. They may be sleeping on a friend's couch. They lack permanent housing for whatever a reason. They don't engage with social service providers. And again, so Chrystal goes out and finds people. Maybe find isn't the right word, but you go to where people are and you connect. So these folks may not be aware of the way to reach out for help. Or maybe they choose not to. They don't know that it's for them, right? So I'm not sure. There's a variety of reasons, but thank goodness that there are people that are going out and doing this. It was in April in 2021 that they did the count, and 207 people were encountered. 67% were adults, 26 were 16 to 24 years old, and 7% were children. 52% were male, identified as male, and 40% identified as female. And as a side note, this is high compared to a national statistics for women. Kingston has more females that are unhoused than other Canadian cities. I've personally met some of them, and it's, as you know, as Cory said, it's so hard to be on the streets. But if you can, I don't want to be, well, I'm going to sound sexist, but it's going to be really, really hard for a female to be on the street, really hard. So, and 31% identified as Indigenous. So in Kingston, people who are identified as Indigenous make up 3 to 4% of our population. So 31% of them homeless is an extremely high number. It's it's not in line with any statistics. It's just a high number. Average of people experiencing homelessness the average age, I should say, is 37. So I think, as Cory was saying, there, he wasn't around a lot of young people. And the point in time count encountered 9 homeless families that included a total of 16 children. And I just think that touches me, because children are essentially along for the ride in life until they can make decisions for themselves. So it's really kind of heartbreaking. Final consideration on this point in time count, that these numbers should be considered minimum. Not everyone wants to speak to strangers and share their stories and connect in ways that they're not sure where the information is going to be used, and who are you? Why should I talk to you? I might say the same thing. Why do you want to know about my life? So there's the number only captures so many people in the survey. So what's being done in our city to combat the increasing situation of homelessness? I can tell you that this year the Downtown Business Association got together with the city and service agencies and providers to talk about the situation and how to reduce or eliminate people living on the street. Early results of these meetings show that the city is committed to increasing access to street crisis. They're going to expand the number of hours that there's outreach available and intervention teams, and they're going to be providing more day shelters. Now, this isn't now. All of these things are coming, so it's all in the timeline. They've committed to doing this, but I'm not sure how fast it's going to happen. The wheels sometimes move slowly. But I can hope that they understand, they've seen that the need is there, and I hope that they can help speed that process. There's a number of agencies focusing on finding shelter. Chrystal was on my list already to announce, but you've probably already gone through it. I mean, there's the Integrated Care Hub, there's Indigenous Housing Center, a lot of places that are providing services, home-based housing, Lily's Place, In From the Cold, Housing Help Center, supportive housing. But having said all that, I still feel like it's not enough. There's so much need in the community, and we need to find ways to reach people that are effective. And Chrystal and I had chatted some time ago. I had toured a tiny house community in a city in the US, and I was so impressed with what they were doing. They were providing a place for people to stay, but as Cory was saying, they all take part in the community. They're all doing something. I know some folks over at the Portsmouth Harbour were shoveling walkways and doing things and sharing services, and that's what they did in this city in the US. And I think we've got a long ways to go, but we're taking steps. So at Martha's Table, of course, we focus on food. That's always our mission. But we can't help but get to know folks that are living rough. They're insecure housed, and we do what we can. We've offered ID clinics for several years. That's through Queens Pro Bono, and if we can help people get identification, that again helps the process that Cory outlined. You can't get a job if you don't have a phone. You can't get mail if you don't have an address, and all of those things combine to be barriers that sometimes are insurmountable. So getting identification, we're committed to that. The pandemic has caused havoc a little bit with that program but those, I would say kudos to the Queen students. They came down and they worked outside in the cold so they could connect with people because we are a closed facility. So congratulations to them. And the tiny homes are just a big part of what's going to help us move forward. So a few stories I mentioned I would share, just skimming along the surface, and about people that I've gotten to know through my time here at Martha's Table. And our tagline has always been food and friendship, because we understand the social aspect of connecting with people, feeling cared about by the community and acknowledged by the community is a big part of getting through your day. You don't feel as isolated and alone. There's someone that you can reach out to for help. Even if we're not the end providers, we can say now, you know what, call Chrystal. She might be able to hook you up. We can say, call, home base. They might be able to help you. So that's what we do at Martha's. We try to provide a connection and a bridge between people that are already doing these great services. But to preserve confidentiality in my stories, I'm going to make up names and just, we never ask people their personal stories. The information that I have has been voluntarily shared. People like to chat. So, after they get to know us, and there's, so many sad, shocking life details. And I always warn people here, almost a caution, not a warning, but really is just to say, there's a need in the community and we need to face it head on, but we can't absorb it all because we need to be here to offer our service for tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. So the cautionary tale is do everything within your power today to help someone. Do everything you can, but you cannot go to sleep with that in your heart because you have to regenerate. I'm probably not explaining this very well, but what I'm saying is we need to do our very best at all times and stay connected, but protect yourself. Find the counterbalance in what is going on. So for example, someone would come in and say, I've just been, somebody stole my things, I've been robbed, and they took my last $3 and I've got to cross town. I've got to go to a doctor's appointment and I can't get there. So that's not a terrible tale as far as they go here in the community, but it's still a serious struggle and trauma. I will see somebody else in the drop-in center turn and say, listen, here's money for the bus, take it, off you go. So that's the counterbalance I'm trying to explain, that you find the good. I always tell people I have a front row seat to see the best in humanity, the best in the community, because people are reaching out to help. And on the other side of that same coin, I'm hearing and knowing the real day-to-day struggles. So people have asked me, how do you stay there? How do you deal with this? And I'm like, I love it. It's the best place to be, to see people helping people. And that's the root of it. And I apologize. I don't want you to go off feeling that I'm emotionally withdrawn, but it's finding a counterbalance. Okay. So one story, again, these are just brief overviews. Let's say Donnie, regularly homeless. He struggled to maintain housing because, for a variety of reasons, but mainly from some rather serious mental health and addiction challenges. He had shared as a young child, he lived, I'm just going to say appallingly violent physical abuse. Those were inflicted by close family members. So we met Donnie as an adult, of course, and when he wasn't heavily using drugs, he was quite well spoken, very considerate, a lovely person. And it was in those periods that we got to know him, and that helped us provide him care and empathy when he wasn't quite so lucid. So it helped us be a friend to him. So he could be volatile and unpredictable, and it made it very difficult for him to maintain a residence. The affordability of housing almost forced him to have roommates, and being a little volatile and unpredictable would often circumvent that process, where he would lose his roommate and then lash out at the landlord when they looked for rent. And again, Donnie was homeless. So it was a really vicious cycle. And the best we could do, we connected Donnie with some rehab facilities and tried to get him some support for his mental health challenges, because I cannot imagine living in Donnie's shoes. Simply, I won't share the details of that abuse, but quite specific and intolerable. Linda was chronically homeless. She was a a couch surfer. So she would stay with a friend for a couple of days here and a friend for a day there. And again, same as Donnie, her mental health was a struggle, or caused her to struggle, I should say. And she had some childhood sexual abuse, again, at a close family member and a family friend's hands. So she habitually fell into adult relationships with abusers. So the cycle was now repeated. So she turned to self-medication, and which turned into adult lifetime of drug addiction. So people don't just start using drugs casually. There's reasons, and just, it's not for us to judge. So, I mean, many people visit Martha's and they live with insecure housing. A number are homeless, and the balance that are visiting Martha's, they live with extreme financial challenges. They all, bottom line, they all live precariously and often in unsafe conditions. They live with black mold, I'm going to say bugs, drugs, violences surrounding them, and abuse. During our services, we have a day shelter, and people come in cold, wet, hungry. We've witnessed them, they lash out in frustrations, or the opposite, they close themselves off and don't want to speak to anyone. So we do our very best to meet their needs by offering that safe place to rest, a warm drink and food. We try to make that food nutritious and well balanced to help people stay healthy. But overall, we really focus on keeping our environment welcoming, free of judgment. There's no time limits on how long somebody can stay in our space, of course, during the time that we're open and closed. And there's no prerequisites for using our service. We don't have to ask questions. You don't have to be homeless or whatever. Anyone's welcome. Use us when you need it. And we hope we can encourage people to take steps to move forward in their personal goals, whatever they may be. We offer people ways to connect with experts in housing, medical, financial support, whatever they may need. In summary, I would just say living on the streets is referred to living rough. I think that's the biggest understatement ever. It's hard, it's dangerous, incredibly scary, and lonely. People become ill because of the exposure. There's a risk of theft and violence. It's endless. I think Cory said it so well. He didn't sleep because he was afraid of getting hurt or robbed. So again, from my personal observation only, there's not a single person that chooses on any level to drop out of society. No one chooses to behave in a way that is contrary to public norms. No one chooses to live permanently outdoors or suffer from abuse or poverty. And I think you know where my heart is. Earlier, I mentioned children. 16 children were in that point of time count. Every child should have the opportunity to grow in a home that allows them access to that nutritious food. They should have a roof over their heads, a safe place to grow, study, and learn, to socialize and dream. It's things that so many of us, it's not that we take it for granted, we just don't even think about it. It's beyond taking it for granted. But it's just, stating the obvious, people need help. And I really think there's so much that we have to learn, why they're there, how it's happened, and what we need to do. I think the most thing we could say, ask people what they need, what they want, versus assuming we know. I think that's really vital. In that public meeting that I had mentioned, they were talking about how do they reduce housing, the unhoused. Must be a Sunday. Sorry, as I stammer and stutter. They actually said, why do people sleep on the street? Wouldn't it be warmer under a bush somewhere? And I thought, one thing first, okay, so I'm glad that people are asking questions when they just don't know, because how do you know if you don't ask? And the second thought that came to my mind is, wow, that's, wouldn't it be better for somebody to sleep under a bush? No, it wouldn't. It's not warmer. People like and need to be connected in our community. There's lights in the city. It's not dark. There's a lot of different factors, but first and foremost, I'm glad people are asking the questions, and it's important that we learn as we go, because no one has all the answers. I certainly don't. And I just think it's such a complex issue. And I believe we have to support our youth through a variety of methods to ensure that they have the tools and the skills as they grow to have their feet under them when they, or if they do hit a roadblock or a hurdle. And they know that it's okay to reach out for help when they need to. If we can reduce the stigma, right? That's such a, I start to grit my teeth when I hear that word, because as I think as a human race, we have to decide what's safe and what's not safe quickly. What's safe, that's how we survived. But we can't jump to conclusions. We can't assume we know the answers without doing research and talking to people, asking what is needed versus, as I said, assuming. But if we can get children and have the support they need at the time when they need it, give them the confidence, I think we're going to have a better generation coming up in the future. Martha's will continue as long as we're needed. And I hope that that's not too long. I hope it's this generation. I hope the next generation doesn't need us as much. I mean, there's always a reason to need a prepared meal. But instead of 100,000 people in a year, I would hope, wouldn't it be nice if it was 1,000, right? Just in case of emergency. So that's our goal, to be here as long as needed. And I hope that through people just like yourselves reaching out to offer and to ask those questions that are so important, you'll have a better grasp on how to prevent this as we move forward. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rhonda. Does anybody have any questions?
So as I said, I think it was all said by Cory. I just have some numbers for you. It's really the lived experience is so informative and so impactful. Yeah.
I just had one question. I was just wondering how you started and got involved with Martha's Table.
That's a really good question, because I come from a corporate background. I'm not a social service worker. Never anticipated seeing myself in this role. I grew up in Kingston, but I moved to Toronto and I worked in the city for a long time, and always in a frontline role between wherever I was working and ensuring that the customer had a positive experience. So it was really corporate. I import, export, different things like that, manufacturing. So when we moved back to Kingston, there was nothing for me here in Kingston related to what I was doing in Toronto. So I thought, how do I remake myself? So I had a great opportunity to just sit back and think about that for a few months. And I decided to go back to college. And of all things, I decided on culinary college. And because I had a love of cooking, and I did that, and I worked in the field for about 5 years, and this opportunity came up, and I thought, I love what I'm doing. I'm going to stick with it. But then I thought, wait a second. As I pondered the opportunity, I presented myself for I sent off my resume and I had an interview, and I think it brings the two worlds that I have experience in together. So corporate and the food industry. So it I think, make decisions that work for you in the moment and follow your path. And this is the best job I've ever had. I may not express myself clearly on a Sunday afternoon, but I promise you, this is a great place to be. And you really do see the challenges of community, what's needed, but you get to see the best part of what people have to offer to each other. And that's how I've been here for so long, seeing people giving to other people. And, I'm so happy my path took me here. I feel like every job that I took in my career led me here. My first job, I was a 16-year-old lifeguard, right? So everything is cumulative. So here we are, and I love it.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a good question, Nikita. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Just a quick one. Like how many people on average per day do you provide a meal for? And also like how has like the pandemic affected that?
We pre-pandemic, we served about 50,000 meals. We don't count people, we count meals. And that was part of our making it welcoming, maybe, removing barriers to access. And so we did about 50,000 meals, and we did breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the first year of the pandemic, we were about 100,000 meals. So, and that was one meal a day versus the 3 meals a day. So it's had an incredible impact on what we do. We can serve more physically because we're offering takeout meals. So before we called ourselves a low-cost restaurant. Cory had mentioned we normally charged $1 for our dinner. Breakfast and lunch were no charge, and dinner was $1. So the idea was, you're paying for your meal, and you're entitled to have expectations and entitled to have a level of service. And if you didn't feel like it was warm enough, you were comfortable saying, can you heat this up? I've paid for my meal just like anybody else. That was the premise of the $1, but we have removed that since Cory had visited Martha's Table, because we understood that it was a barrier as well. And while we made exceptions and he didn't have to pay for his meal, we wanted everyone to feel that ease of use. So being able to offer meals to more people because it's just takeout, they didn't come in and sit down and have a full serve meal. We bussed tables, we poured drinks, we brought dessert out. We had appetizers and meal and dessert, and people sat with coffees and chit-chatted. So we're able to get more people served in a takeout manner. Now, our goal is to return to in-house service, but we'll always maintain the takeout service. And we also deliver meals door to door. So we had delivered some meals to Chrystal's tiny homes to get them rolling as they got their feet under them. We deliver some meals to mental health and to the COVID-19 overflow hotel. So we do what we can to get meals to people that are shut in, that just can't leave home. And we expect to have about 110,000 served this year. So not quite the steep incline that it was in 2021, but the need is still out there and it's still growing. So yeah. While I've got your ear, I would like to say thank you for the donation of food. That was really nice to receive on Friday afternoon. So to those involved, it does help a lot. We're not funded by the government, or we're not at a United Way agency. So we do rely on support just like yours. So thanks.
Of course, thank you for giving us the opportunity to give back to the community. We were very excited to be able to do a nice little flower sale for Valentine's Day and then be able to donate those funds. So yeah, thank you for letting us do that. Anybody else have any other questions? All right. Well, with that, I'm just going to leave you guys with a few things. First of all, thank you, Radha, for speaking. That was fantastic. We really did appreciate your time. And we completely understand that there were some technical errors at the beginning, so don't even worry about that. Beyond that, I also want to let you guys know, people here who are from the exec will probably know this already, but we will be doing an event with Tommy's. So Tommy's down in front of the Metro that sells delicious food. On the, I believe it's the 23rd. So we will be doing the deliveries on behalf of Tommy's, and all of the funds that we will raise will be going to Chrystal's organization, Our Livable Solutions. So keep that put into your calendar. Be sure to order some tasty food that day and support our community. But with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming in today, and I hope you guys all have a fantastic Sunday evening. Take care.